Good morning. It is 9:30 by that clock in the back. And this morning we got a lot to talk about. So with that being said, we'll get into it after we have a word of prayer. So I ask you to pray with me this morning. Heavenly Father, Lord, we're grateful for another morning that you've given us, another opportunity, Lord, to come together as a group, as a body, Lord, to dig into your word. And we know this morning, Lord, that we're going to be talking about the trespass offering, Lord. And I just ask, Lord, that as we go through this information in your word this morning, that we'll look at those relationships in our lives, and we'll look at and examine, where we are at in relationship with people, and then by extension, in relationship with you. Please bless us and give us the understanding that we can take from this and apply to our lives. In your Son's name, amen. Well, I am grateful. Last week, Ken took the sin offering, and he did a great job with that. And this week, we're going to be covering the trespass offering. Next week, we get to study about two individuals that made a really bad decision. Really bad decision. And those were sons. Sometimes children don't exactly follow the example that's been put forth, do they? And so next week we'll be talking about Nadab and Abihu. And so this morning we're going to be talking about the trespass offering, and our text is going to be a little scattered a little bit. So we're going to read the text this morning, then we'll go through and make some applications. So our text begins this morning in Leviticus chapter 5, and starting in verse 14. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if a person commits a trespass and sins unintentionally in regard to the holy things of the Lord, then he shall bring to the Lord as his trespass offering a ram without blemish from the flocks, with your valuation in shekels of silver according to the shekel of the sanctuary, as a trespass offering. And he shall make restitution for the harm that he has done in regard to the holy thing, and shall add 1/5 to it and give it to the priest. So the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him. If a person sins and commits any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of the Lord, though he does not know it, yet he is guilty and shall bear his iniquity. And he shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish from the flock with your valuation as a trespass offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him regarding his ignorance in which he erred and did not know it, and it shall be forgiven him. It is a trespass offering. He has certainly trespassed against the Lord. We continue into chapter 6. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if a person sins and commits a trespass against the Lord by lying to his neighbor about what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or about a pledge, or about a robbery, or if he has extorted from his neighbor, or if he has found what was lost and lies concerning it, and swears falsely in any one of these things that a man may do in which he sins, and it shall be, because he has sinned and is guilty, that he shall restore what has been stolen, or the thing which he has extorted, or what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or the lost thing which he had found, or all that about which he has sworn falsely. He shall restore its full value, add 1/5 more to it, and give it to whomever it belongs on the day of his trespass offering. And he shall bring his trespass offering to the Lord, a ram without blemish from the flock, with your valuation as a trespass offering to the priest. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord, and he shall be forgiven for any one of these things that he may have done in which he trespasses. Now go over to chapter 7, starting in verse 1. Likewise, this is the law of the trespass offering. It is most holy. In the place where they kill the burnt offering, they shall kill the trespass offering. In its blood he shall sprinkle all around on the altar, and he shall offer from it all its fat, the fat tail and the fat that covers the entrails, the two kidneys, and the fat that is on them by the flanks, and the fatty lobe attached to the liver above the kidneys he shall remove, and the priest shall burn them on the altar as an offering made by the fire to the Lord. It is a trespass offering. Every male among the priests may eat it. It shall be eaten in a holy place. It is most holy. The trespass offering is like the sin offering. There is one law for them both. The priest who makes atonement with it shall have it. All right, that was a lot of reading. Now, so we know that trespasses involve the last 5 of the 10 commandments, and all laws later given to amplify and articulate those laws. And so a little bit of background here from the Hebrew. The name Asham literally meant guilt or debt. All wrongdoing creates a moral responsibility. And so those who trespass cannot be right with God until the wrong has been made fully right by God's law. This offering assumes that the wrong committed broke fellowship with God and with God's people. It means the individual is spiritually lost and cannot participate in any tabernacle worship. Did God take very seriously our relationship with other people? Yes, He did. Now, when you think about how serious this is, does it make more sense now when I believe Ken referenced Mark 12 last week? Is that right? When we're talking about the greatest command, and the greatest command is to love God with everything, and then what does Jesus also do? He slides to love your neighbor, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, right beside that. And He said, upon these 2, right? Upon these 2 rest all the law and the prophets. In other words, what He's saying is, if you love God with everything and you love your neighbor as yourself, are you good? Yeah. It covers all of it. All of it. And so this is very important. You take care, you make right these instances where we have trouble or problems with other people, because if you can't have peace with other people, you can't have peace with God. And so there's an onus there to make right things that are wrong. And that kind of pushes back with society today, where sometimes we think we have maybe the moral high ground there. You know what I mean? Well, they did this, and so that means they need to come to me. Well, if I know there's a problem with somebody and I know they got a problem with me, maybe it's not too much. It's not really about who's got the moral high ground. The whole emphasis about broken relationships is reconciliation, correct? I want to reconcile with you. I don't care who has to take the first step, who's got to make the phone call, who's got to take the visit. I don't care about that. What matters is the fact is that I want to repair this relationship. Now, some people might not let you do that. Some people might, push away from your greatest attempt to do that. But God knows us, and He knows what we've done and what we've tried to do, correct? And so it falls on us to try to do that. All right? So, restitution to fellowship is based on fulfillment of all requirements of strict justice and atonement. Now, there's something interesting that Jesus says in Matthew 5. We'll get to that. That's concerning us. We'll get to that at the end. If you've already looked ahead and kind of studied ahead, we'll get to that. This is a most holy type sacrifice. Nothing sweet savor about such actions. Right relations with man, prerequisite to right relations with God. I wrote a question down next to this, and sometimes I do that when I go through material. I think questions pop in my head, and the question that popped in my head is, what is God's expectations for us based off this? I'm sorry? Absolutely, to love one another, absolutely. And so He has an expectation for us to be peaceable people, correct? When we mess up, fix it. When we cross the line, make it right. Go talk to people, right? Don't get so much in your feelings and your pride. There's a reason why God does not like pride. Because pride creates a barrier to a lot of things, don't it? I can't go talk to them because then people are going to think that I'm lesser than, right? Right? They're going to think I'm weak. They're going to think, it don't matter what man thinks, y'all. It matters what God thinks. And God says, make it right. There's an expectation placed upon us here. And so he goes on to say that this is an individual sacrifice. Trespasses always involve invasion of the rights and properties of others. Not possible that every Jew would simultaneously commit the same trespass. There were whole congregation sin offerings and one annual day of atonement for the nation, but trespasses are never congregational or national. This was an individual matter. Where am I at? Where am I at? That whole idea of self-examination is very important to the Christian life. Y'all agree with that? It is. Where am I at? Is there anything I need to do? It should be on our minds, y'all. It should be on our minds. It should be on our hearts. Does someone have a problem with me? Well, why do they? Well, Becky comes in the door and she won't speak to me, and it's been 3 weeks and she just walks right by me. Not saying she does that. It just, so what does that tell me? Is there potentially an issue here? Yeah. So what should I do? I'm like, Becky, why won't you say something to me? There you go. There you go. There you go. And you know what we can do then? Now we can talk about it, right? Well, I couldn't go see you babies because I have babies and my babies take up all of my time, so I couldn't go see your babies. Oh. But it's real easy, right? It's real easy. And so with it, there is a respect for rights and properties of others that's demanded. Since God has the greatest rights here, it was possible for a Hebrew to trespass against God. Normally, a violation of man against God demanded a sin offering. Violation of man to man required the trespass offering. And so, trespasses against God required the sin. Trespasses against man required the trespass offering. And so there's examples showing here that a man could trespass against God. And there's some examples right there where it talks about that. Obviously, we know that God, that man does on a daily basis sin, correct? And that's a barrier, Isaiah 59 verses 1 and 2 says, your sins and your iniquities have done what? Have separated you from your God. Your actions, okay? And so we obviously know that that can happen. There can be problems there. So let's look at trespasses involving man-to-man violations. What can we do? What can we do to have problems with man? Well, how about this? You deceive a neighbor. You deceive a neighbor. Does that happen, y'all? Absolutely it does. You deceive a neighbor, something is entrusted to them. This could be a loan or trusting care of livestock, and he abused or unlawfully uses it or sells it. One of the greatest pieces of advice I could give you is to be careful. Be careful. You want to help people, but be sensible about things of that nature. Have y'all ever had somebody come to you and say, "Hey, can you get on a car loan with me?" This is a true story, y'all. I actually, when I was 22, an older couple I was close to approached me, and they said, "Hey, would you mind co-signing with us on a car note?" Well, I didn't think anything about it, y'all. You know what I mean? They're good people, and so I did. Y'all, I learned a lesson in life, y'all. I learned a lesson in life. Let's just leave it at that. I was deceived on some things. And when you deceive your neighbor, that causes issues to this day, y'all. To this day, there's issues there in that relationship. Not on my end. I'm fully fine with it. You know what I mean? I'm good. That's been dealt with, right? I'd rather have the relationship than the problem, right? That's what I want. I want to have the relationship. You got to be careful. We get deceived. It creates issues. Falsely representing some product. My goodness. Whew. Sometimes we cannot exactly be forthright in our presentation of things. Stolen properties. You think about unpaid debts, especially if dates are set. My grandparents told me, never let anybody borrow money from you. Just give it to them. I said, I don't understand that. Why would you? And this was when I was younger. I was like, why wouldn't you just want it? If they're going to borrow it, he said, just trust me. If you're going to help somebody, just give it to them. Give it to them. You'll understand later, son. Cheating or oppressing a neighbor, withholding wages, keeping wages beyond payday, taking advantage of another's extreme need. Y'all, taking advantage of people, that's it. We know what happens in our society. We know those things are out there, but we should never take the approach of, man, I'm going to quote unquote help these people, but I'm going to get as much as I can out of this for me. Y'all, the whole premise of trying to help somebody is to help them, right? It's to help them. It's not to try to get the most I can get out of it. Let's see. Finding lost property and not returning it. This happens a lot. I was scrolling through this morning. I saw on that Lowndes County Word of Mouth or whatever it's called, that somebody really nice found a wallet in the Walmart parking lot and posted a picture of the person's license and turned it into the desk and said, it's there, go get it. I was like, wow, people actually do that, because usually what happens, I'm going to go check and see if there's any cash in here, whatever, and just drop it and keep walking. Finding lost property, not returning it. The finder knew it was not his and may know the owner. Claim and use it as though it was his. So with that, there's an onus just to be truthful and to be honest. And so what about restitution and satisfaction? All right, this is the central theme of the trespass offering. Restitution of the property was the first demand. Let's go over to Numbers chapter 5. In Numbers chapter 5 and verse 7, then he shall confess the sin which he has committed. He shall make restitution for his trespass in full, plus 1/5 of it, and give it to the one that he has wronged. Why do you think there was a fifth added to it? You give him back what was taken, but why do you think a fifth is added to it? Why do you think it's a practical lesson there? You think you're going to remember that a little bit more? Absolutely. Well, no. This right here is implying that this is somebody who is not being exactly forthright. If the owner is dead, then restitution is to be made to the priest. So either way, y'all, it tells you here, even if the person died, you still got to make restitution, right? The onus is you still got to make it right. You still got to do something about this. And so it'd be made to the priest in that effect. A person cannot be right with God while his neighbor's money is in his pocket. Whew. That says a lot, don't it? Satisfaction involves an added amount. An additional 1/5 or 20% of the value of the property is given to the offended neighbor. Restitution and satisfaction made by standard of the shekel of the sanctuary. This was a double tithe and could not be ignored because the owner was deprived of the use and employ of what he had was taken. Guilty must realize no profit from wrongdoing. and this was also done to appease the sense of loss by the owner, basically to make things right, to satisfy the justice that was offended. And so here again, there's no exception for ignorance here. Now, if you were to get stopped and you tell the police officer, I didn't know that was a 35, you know? Sir, you were going 55 in a 35. I didn't know it was 35. It's not my fault. You don't have, you didn't have a sign posted where I could see it. We know that deputy's going to say, you know what, sir, you're absolutely right. We should have done a better job posting these speed limits. And you know what? Since you didn't see what the speed limit was, there's no ticket here. There's no problem, right? That happens, right? Especially through Lake Park, right? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Exactly right. I have a good friend of mine that I worked with at Dillard's and Winn-Dixie when I was growing up. His name's Kenji, and he lived in Bremerton. Y'all want to talk about, you think you got it rough in Lake Park, go there. And he got in his car one day, and he was going to go to the store to pick up some groceries. Well, he goes, and he had a moment where, when you get up to the red light and, it's on green, and then right when you get to it, it hits yellow. And you're in trouble, right? Because what do? If I can slam on brakes, but then I might be halfway out there, you know what I mean? But if I keep going, it might turn red. And then I ran a red light in Bremerton. And so anyway, so he decided, you know what? I'm all in. And when he went through, there just happened to be a deputy right there. And so the deputy stopped him, pulled him over. He says, all right, sir, I need to see your license and registration. You were speeding, and you ran a red light. So Kenji goes to try to find his wallet, and he said, sir, I didn't know I was speeding. I thought I was going, within the lines. He says, no, sir, you were going 47 in a 35. Same thing. Well, I didn't know that. Sir, give me your license. So Kenji goes to look around. Guess what? He left his wallet at the house. So he doesn't have his license. He says, well, show me your insurance. It's in his wallet. He left that in the house. He says, sir, I'm going to need you to get out of your vehicle. Kenji gets out of his vehicle. He didn't put shoes on, y'all. He said, he gets out of the vehicle. He says, sir, where's your shoes at? He says, at the house. Well, you got to wear shoes when you drive. I didn't know that. Who knows that, Anyway, I say that to say this. He claimed ignorance of the law, and the deputy said, listen here, sir, get back in your vehicle. I'm going to write you a speeding ticket here, and that's all I'm going to cite you for, but you can go straight home and get your shoes on and get your wallet and get your insurance card, pay attention to the speed limits, and don't run a red light again. He claimed ignorance of the law, y'all. It don't work. We as Christians, y'all, for a practical application is we can't claim ignorance either, can we? When God says, hey, you were supposed to do this. I told you to do this. Well, I didn't know about that. Is that going to work? Not at all. The onus is on us. And so with it, there is no ignorance. There's no exception for ignorance here. And so with it, whether unwittingly or wittingly, same ordinance. And then restitution and satisfaction. Let's see. When restitution and satisfaction is fully made, he is right with his neighbor, but not yet with who? He's right with one, but he's not yet right with the other. He also must make the sacrifice of atonement, the trespass offering, to be right with God, and he shall be forgiven. So he had to be right with his neighbor, and then he had to be right with God. You understand, one had to be done before the other. And so that's a pretty powerful lesson for us. And so what's the basis for the trespass offering? The trespass offering is the basis of the law. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Rigid, strict justice is demanded. And so we look at the strict justice of the law, if you want to go over with me to Exodus 21. Exodus 21, verse 23 and 24. But if any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, and foot for foot. Now, some people argue that, there's still some countries today that pushes this. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Saudi Arabia has this kind of law. You steal something, they cut off your hand. You steal something else, well, good luck signing your checks. Okay? They don't play with this. Now, some people say, well, that's barbaric. Some people will say, you only make that mistake one time. You can make that call. Even in the absence of money, possibly dealing with meanness, slander, pettiness, this matter goes to the judge or priest for decision. Could impose corporal punishment on the wrongdoer. Limit of 40 stripes before the judge or the priest, never to exceed 40 stripes, for that would degrade your brother. Do not make him, not to make him vile. Purpose of this is correction, not vengeance. In other words, what he's saying here is the punishment was set to be a correcting punishment, not to be so extreme that they want vengeance because of it. Does that make sense? All claims must be well proven. One witness is not enough to convict a man accused of any crime or offense. Why is one witness, y'all, not enough? Yeah. Could there be a bias? Absolutely. I mean, if you get one person, you can find one person to say anything, right? And so sometimes you're going to need more than one to be able to substantiate this. Matter of fact, if you go to any court hearing today, is it just one witness? No, one witness is not really a strong case, right? I want to have multiple witnesses. Let's see. If a malicious witness falsely accuses a man, the judge or the priest will investigate. If he is proven to be false, then do to him as he intended to do to his brother. Whew. In other words, if you're trying to make trouble from somebody and you're lying to get them in trouble, whatever those consequences are, they're going to be on you. Do you think this prohibited a lot of this? Oh yeah, they didn't play with this, y'all. They didn't play with this. Sometimes in our justice system, we look and we're like, man, why in the world did this not happen? Why is this not happening? Back then, this happened, y'all. And when you got a strict justice system, it eliminates a lot of the riffraff that goes on. Further litigation by the priest. If litigants cannot settle a matter of bloodshed, lawsuits, or assaults between themselves, they would go to the priest or the judge, inquire of them, and they will give you the verdict. You must act according to the decisions that they give. Do not turn aside from what they tell you to the right or to the left. The man who shows contempt for the judge or priest who stands ministering there to the Lord your God must be put to death. You must purge the evil from Israel. In other words, when they set forth their decision, you will follow it. And if you create issues and you don't follow it, you go to the right or the left of it, and you create issues, then it's dealt with, y'all. It's dealt with. He says here, you must purge the evil from Israel, because if you don't, you think about Korah, and you think about the issues there. If you don't deal with those issues when they first come up, can it lead to bigger things? It absolutely can. It absolutely can. So what's the ritual here? And then we'll get to some practical applications. So the ritual, restitution and satisfaction. First, stage 1, restitution, satisfaction. Restitution and satisfaction is made. And then stage 2, there's open confession of the wrong. The specific wrong or trespass must be specified. It establishes law of one sacrifice for each wrong done. This is parallel to the sin offering. You have got to own up to what you did. I cheated my brother. This is what I did. I've got to make that known. The slaying of the animal required. Regardless of who wrongs another, the ram is required as the only sacrifice allowed. Whether the high priest, civil ruler, rich or poor, the law requires a ram. No provision made for the poor man, as in the sin offering, teaching that poverty is no excuse for stealing. So you know in the sin offering, as Ken was going with you through it last week, there were options, correct? Depending on your economic status, there was always something you could do there, right? To make atonement. Here, there is not. This is the expectation. Because, like he says here, teaching that poverty is no excuse for stealing. In other words, just because this is where you're at, it doesn't justify you committing wrong. So, only pride, he says here, only pride would cause one to steal rather than to beg. And then stage 4, the sprinkling of the blood by the priest on the sides of the altar of the burnt offering in the courtyard. This is the place when atonement is marginal. In sin offering, atonement was central, thus on the horns. But here, the major abuse of the trespass has been made right already by restitution and satisfaction. So atonement is secondary to restitution and satisfaction. Stage 5, all the fat is removed and fumed, incense to God. It is seen by God as a fragrant odor, as the fat of the sin offering for atonement is accepted. 6, the disposition of the sacrificial body. The priest who officiates at the sacrifice gets the body. It is to be eaten in a holy place. All right, now let's get to the practical applications here of this. We see that a person, can trespass against God and can rob God. Turn over to Malachi with me. Malachi 3 and verse 8. 3 and verse 8 says, "Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, In what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings." By depriving God, you think about how we can rob God. You can deprive God of worship. You can deprive God of service. You can deprive God of offerings that God has a right to. You think about that today. Do we have an obligation? We're here this morning, correct? We woke up. Some of y'all had your coffee. And then some of y'all had some more. And you came here. And we're at Bible study. And that's a great thing. In a few moments, we'll worship God. Can you rob God in worship? And how does that happen? Well, you think about it. I'm in worship. I'm sitting here. I don't know who's leading singing this morning, but who? Chris. Chris is going to lead singing this morning. Is there an obligation for us to sing? Absolutely. And if we were to think about this from a standpoint of, am I robbing God? It ain't about me. I don't care if you got the worst voice in the world. I do. I don't care. It's about Him. Do we have an obligation to be focused when we come to the table this morning? Do we have an obligation to be focused on this? Yes. Otherwise, you're robbing God. And so on and so forth. Whenever I go to give this morning, do I have an obligation to give cheerfully? Do I have an obligation to give out of love and appreciation for what the Lord has given to me? And should that be the first thing or the last thing that I budget? Can I rob God? Absolutely, I can rob Him. In the sin offering, faith is in expiatory sacrifice demanded. But in trespass offering, fruits worthy of repentance are demanded. Offering or no offering, a man is not right with God with his neighbor's money in his pocket. In other words, you got to do something about this. You can't be having issues with man and be right with God. Station, office, economics of the individual do not diminish guilt. We know in this world today that you can have a lot of power and you can get away with a lot of stuff, correct? You can do that. Not with God. He is not a respecter of persons. I don't care if you're the President of the United States or you're a Prime Minister of a country or you're on the county commissioner seat. I could care less. That might get you out of some things here, but it doesn't get you out of hot water with the Lord. It doesn't do that. God's justice and righteousness are defended in the trespass offering. The priest or the judge hands down God's decisions, and the offender must bow to that decision or die. Spiritually speaking, y'all, we know what God requires of us and what He tells us to do to be right with Him, correct? He does that. He puts it out there for us. And now He expects us to follow that. He requires obedience. That's what He wants. In some cases, from a spiritual standpoint here, are some people going to die spiritually because they refuse to follow what He has said? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely they will. There is a very important passage. If you'll go over a couple of places to Matthew 5, since we were just in Malachi, if you'll go over to Matthew 5 in verse 23, Jesus says here, "Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. As surely I say to you, you will by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny." Now, this morning, as we look at this, and we look at our lives, is there somebody that we need to make things right with? It's on us now. And He puts that there. Jesus says, you leave your gift at the altar. You want to come worship Me? First go and be restored. Fix that relationship to the best of your ability and then come back. I know I've told this story before that there was a church, there's a church that I know of that was considering before worship even begins, before you get to the announcements, that the elders would come up and they would open up an opportunity for anyone to come forward and make things right with an individual that they have something either against, or they know they need to make something right. They've done something, one way or the other, before worship even begins. Here with it, well, I don't know, is that a good idea, y'all? I mean, if there's things to get off of you, there's things to get off of you. I would say before you even get to church, before you get here this morning, try to work that out. Can we truly worship God if we've got problems with relationships with people? Absolutely. So, one of the greatest challenges that we have in this life, y'all, is who we're gonna live for. We're gonna live for ourselves, or we're gonna live for God. Is my life gonna be based off of His will or my will? Correct? That's the greatest issue that we have, because self fights with self every single day. How many of y'all, we go through our days and a situation happens and I've got a choice, make this decision or make this decision. And self is saying, make that decision, right? But then I'm thinking as a Christian, right, and who I'm supposed to be, God's telling me to make that decision. And we fight with that within ourselves every single day. Which one am I going to go with? Whose will am I going to bend my life to? The world or to God's? And so with it, you think about really what this is saying to us this morning. And that is, we need to be the type of people that out of our respect and our admiration, our love for God, to go beyond what this world would tell us to do. This world will tell you, somebody commits a trespass against you, get even, correct? This world tells you to not only get even, but kind of like the 1/5 that's added on, add interest to the hurt, right? Not just get even, but put more pain and suffering on them. God tells us we're not to be those type of people, regardless of what this world tells you, regardless of what your friends tell you, oh, you should go do this. Regardless of what your family tells you, oh, you should go do this. No, God says you listen to me, and this is my expectation for you. Paul wrote to the Galatians in Galatians 5, and this is something that we've read many times probably. But he's talking about here what we should exhibit as Christians. In other words, our characteristics, if you will. And Galatians 5, starting in verse 22, he says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, or long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law." Now you look at all those fruits of the Spirit there, right? Do they fall in line with what our attitude should be in our relationship with other people? Yes. You think about the worst situation you've been in. How did I, where it goes wrong? Could I have shown more patience? Did I show love? Did I show self-control? You talk about something that really needs to be shown in our society today is self-control towards a lot of things. Did I show those things? Did I exhibit kindness? You can only, at the end of the day, you can only do what you can do to restore and try to be reconciled one to the other. But there is an onus from God that you try. That you try. So, as we get ready to, as time approaches, I would say this week, look at my life and my relationships with people, whether it's at work, whether it was in my family, whatever it is, and can I be reconciled to them, Can I be reconciled? What steps can I take? Because when you take those steps, God's going to appreciate that. And He's going to be, and we're going to glorify Him in our efforts to be who He calls us to be. And you never know, y'all. One phone call might open up the doors to a relationship being restored that maybe you previously thought there's no way in the world we're ever going to be able to have a conversation, or we're never going to be able to have a relationship. So take that step. All right? Any final questions or comments? Y'all are kind of quiet today. Is it? Huh? I thought everybody was mourning for the fact that this is the last cool morning that we're going to have till, what is it around here, January, excuse me. January. I didn't know what it was. All right, well, we got about 1 minute, so y'all enjoy an extra minute of fellowship.